We're going to be going live in 3, 2, 1, live.
Thank you very much. Well, good afternoon all. My name, I must say, well, it's not evening yet, but my name is Councillor Surinder Purewal. I am the chair of the Audit and Governance Committee. It's now 5 p.m. So I'd like to welcome you all to the first virtual meeting of the Hounslow Audit and Governance Committee. And I would like to welcome all the members of the committee who are sitting here this evening, and as well as council officers who will be assisting the members throughout the meeting. In addition, I would like to welcome members of the public who are watching this meeting from home. As you know, until recently, the meetings of the council were not legal. Such meetings were not legal, but as a result of the coronavirus pandemic and the contrary arrangements required by the government, the law has recently been changed to let local authorities meet in a virtual way to make decisions. Therefore, this meeting taken place using the recently introduced government regulations. The way this meeting will work will be that as chair, I will be running the meeting and inviting people to speak, as it's very easy for people to speak over each other. In meetings like this, I ask each member or officer to speak in turn at the appropriate stage, and everyone will have a chance. This will mean that there should normally be no need for people to interrupt or ask to speak. However, if a matter does have an urgent reason to interject, for example, for a point of order, please do so by turning your microphone and telling me that you wish to interject. The exception to this will be officers who may turn on their microphones to alert me to any procedural or specific meeting point issue that needs addressing, although I would expect this to be a rare occurrence. In addition, we have producer of the meeting from our ICT department, who will also contact me if necessary, but I think this is unlikely if all goes well, as we hope we will. An allocator of the members for the committee and officers who are expecting to speak will be to mute their microphones and until you are asked to speak. This means that only one person will be speaking at a time and there will be no background noise, making it easier for us to follow the meeting and also for those who are watching at home. I will also ask members always to say who they are when they make a contribution and to speak slowly and clearly for the same reason. Members of the Audit and Governance Committee with us this evening will make decisions. Office of the Council will provide assistance and advice as required, but the final decision will be made by the members. Now, members of the public are reminded that the agenda and all the reports being considered by the committee tonight can be found on the council website under the Audit and Governance Committee meetings page. So if you want to see them, then that's where you look. I also want to make sure that all members have seen the agenda and reports. Please speak if you have not seen them. I would like to remind, is there anything? I'd like to remind my members that if they need to hear of all the presentations for each report we are considering tonight, this means that you should listen to the whole debate. Please do not pop out to make a drink or to go to the loo or water the garden. This is a legal requirement, and I will be asking you to confirm that you heard the whole debate and you vote on any matter this evening. If you should find that you are having technical problems and need to log out the meeting and come back in again, please let me know immediately, ideally beforehand, but if not afterwards, by turning on your microphone. This would be permitted interruption, and we can then decide how to need to recap if there's an essay, or if the member needs to not to vote on that event on the item. Finally, I would say to any member of the public listening or watching, thank you for joining us this evening. We hope this meeting will go well, but this is the first time that Audit and Governance Committee meeting has been run in this way, and we would ask you to bear with us if there are any hitches. Thank you. We will now move on to the first item of the agenda.
You haven't done the introductions, Chair.
Yeah, Chair, you need to introduce the committee, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. Well, the committee members who are joining us here today are Amrit Man.
Go to the previous page.
Yes, I'd like to introduce the members of the each of the members tonight one by one. I will name myself as Councillor Surinder Purewal. I'm the chair of the committee. I'm also the ward councillor for Heston Central Ward. I invite actually Councillor Easton to say about himself.
Good evening, I'm Councillor Richard Easton. This is my second year on this committee, and I'm a councillor for the Osterley and Spring Grove ward.
Thank you. Councillor Emmett Mann.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Amrit Man. I'm a councillor for Heston East Ward and a member of the Audit Committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Sohan Samra.
Good evening, gentlemen and ladies, and sorry, gentlemen. My name is Councillor Sohan Singh Samra. I'm representing Hounslow West Ward. That is my also second meeting as well for the audit.
Thank you. Councillor John Todd.
Yeah, hi, I'm Councillor John Todd. I'm a councillor in Chiswick Homefield Ward, and I've just joined the audit committee.
All right. If you could mute your microphones, please. We also have the officers who will be presenting reports present, including Clive Farshman, Rupert Gwaning, Laura Watson, Daniel Austin, Steve Whitehead, Mike Pinda, Evan Taylor, and also Stuart Frith and Lucy Nutley. They are representatives from our external auditors, Mazars. In addition to the officers, we also have Kate Duffy and Will Lee present from the committee services. We also have officers acting in the producing role for the technical side of the meeting, but as they are not expected to be involved in discussion of the meeting, I will thank them for their help, but will not introduce them by name. Okay. So shall we move on? Yeah. Agenda item 1. Apologies for absence. As you said, Gurmeet Lal for being late. Yeah. And any declaration of interest? No. Anybody? Individually, no?
No, Chair. No, thank you.
No, don't. Okay.
No, Chair.
Thank you. And any commission communications, any other communications at all to anybody? No. Thank you. Then we move to agenda item 2. That should be on pages to start with. And can we for the minutes from pages 1 to 4? Have you looked at them? And are the minutes okay? Have you read them? Is there true reflection of what happened?
Yes.
Do
yes,
we
Chair.
Agreed, Chair.
do we get the minutes?
Agreed. Yep.
Agreed.
John, you weren't there, but you are happy with them?
Sorry, Councillor Todd, you're on mute.
Mr. Samara.
Yeah, I apologise, Chair.
Yeah,
I was mute. I wasn't at the meeting. I have nothing to correct the minutes, therefore.
Thank you very much. So I also say that the correct minutes as at the meeting to reflection. So all the minutes are declared that they are unanimously agreed. Thank you. Now we move on to the next item on the whistleblowing policy. So I invite Steve Whitehead to take us through, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Steve Whitehead. I'm the Director for Human Resources and Organisational Development. And just to say, this is a report for noting. So clearly, under normal circumstances, the committee would have received this report earlier in the year. It's later this year for very obvious reasons. And just to say to the committee members that it's also been shared with Councillor Atherton, who is the lead member for Human Resources and Organisational Development. Members will have seen that the policy is appended to the covering report, and I just wanted to pull out a couple of points by way of introduction and to open the discussion, if that's helpful. So the report covers the calendar year from January to December 2019. We've continued through that period and beyond, indeed, to promote amongst staff the whistleblowing policy, and we've done that in a number of ways. Through messages in 7 days, which is our staff newsletter, through features on the intranet homepage, and we've also had posters put up across council buildings. We have reviewed during that period the whistleblowing policy and consider that it remains fit for purpose. That's not to say we aren't going to review it further this year to ensure that that again is the case, and we'll do that alongside all of our HR and people policies. So you'll see there's some detail of the cases that were reported in 2019. There were 5 cases, which is an increase on last year, which does indicate that staff are aware of the policy and that they're using it to report concerns and engaging with it. However, we did, when we were having the conversation with all of our people about our organisational culture, there was in some areas of the organisation a perception that the whistleblowing policy lacks effectiveness. So we're looking at that and I want to understand that better. That was, I have to say, from people who hadn't necessarily engaged with it, and there weren't a comprehensive number of comments about it negatively, but we do want to respond to that through the forthcoming review. I've provided a summary of the 5 cases. Clearly, members of the committee will understand that we can't provide any more detail than that due to the confidentiality issues. As I've already mentioned, the policy is appended for information. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And any other questions?
Yes.
Okay, Councillor Todd.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Whitehead. Thank you for your report. I'm looking at paragraph 3.7, and there's the wording "investigation concluded" mentioned on 2 occasions. Yeah.
Yes.
Your HR, who does the investigation?
It depends on the nature of the allegation. Sometimes, and where they relate to fraud, potentially we would involve members of the audit team. So Mr. Pinder would be involved in supporting those investigations. Otherwise, it's senior managers from across the organisation, typically where there's a non-financial consideration or the issue is not a financial one.
Okay, and who signs them off? The investigation.
So the people that are accountable for the whistleblowing policy are myself, Clive Palfreyman, and Mike Pinder. And so all of the concluded investigations come through to us as the kind of accountable people.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair.
Yeah. Obviously, from this, the point arising from this is obviously there are issues. What happens here, and are they addressed, or are the staff who makes allegations, are they happy with it for the outcome? You would actually get their opinion.
So thank you, Chair. So what happens with the whistleblowing investigations, where somebody has disclosed an issue anonymously, we're obviously unable to feed back the outcome of the investigation and its conclusion. However, under our policy, where people have identified themselves, then that, yes, does happen. So people are made aware of the outcome.
Thank you. Councillor Easton, do you have any?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, and thank you, Steve, for the report. I consider this to be actually a very important policy in a very important area. We really want staff to be confident to report any areas of concern. I believe we don't want bystanders. We want people who will speak up if there is something which concerns them. In that context, I am surprised by the low number of reports in the calendar year, although I note the comment that it's comparable to some other authorities. And I think, and I note the comments from the recent culture change work in paragraph 3.5 that you've already referenced. So, and I think you're asking for any comments or suggestions going forward. So I think there's two comments and suggestions I'd make. One would be to explicitly engage with our trade union reps on this policy and see if they can have any suggestions or experience from elsewhere to increase confidence and awareness and confidence in using the policy. And secondly, in terms of publicity, perhaps sharing a case study, maybe from another authority, or that would a case study that would highlight the benefit of the organisation of people using a whistleblowing policy, and the fact that it can have a positive benefit. So I'd ask that you take those points on board, and I look forward to next year's report. So thank you.
That will give assurance. Thank you, Councillor Eason. That will give assurance to the other people. Councillor Mann, you have it.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of comments that I'd like to make, and it carries on from what Councillor Eason was saying, in that it's a very low number for the size of organisation that we are. I'm wondering whether you know, the staff are somewhat reluctant to report some of these things, because a number of complaints that have come to me where people feel that they've been done wrong by, and they never actually come onto these sort of lists because, I don't know, for some reason, maybe the procedure, right, whereby they're bludgeoned and therefore then they are constructively dismissed, or they are, shall we say, got a gagging order. These sort of things don't actually appear on this sort of documentation. What I would like to see, if it's all possible, and this is only where Steve or Clive that can answer, which is that, you know, in number of areas where we may have actually got into a legal dispute, and these things are within the realms of our legal department, we don't have to know who they are, but we need to know a number of cases where we as a local authority are being taken to court, or in terms of shall we say industrial tribunals, because that will give you a true indicator of the depth of feeling amongst our staff, and if our staff are happy, then actually it makes for a happy council. So I'm worried that we may have, and I give over to the experience, that we may have missed some of our key areas in addressing in this documentation. But I will go with it as it is, but bearing in mind that particular caveat that I've just pointed to. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Mann. And you wish to respond, Steve, to this at all?
Yes, if I could, Chair, thank you. That would be helpful. So, in terms of Councillor Eason's comments, yes, indeed, the publicity we can look at. We can look at using case studies, certainly for other local authorities. Explicitly, we do very firmly intend to engage with the trade unions. We also want to explore the whistleblowing policy and its effectiveness with our new equality groups that we're setting up across the organisation, particularly around disclosure of discrimination where that may be experienced. So quite rich conversations to be had with those equality groups as well, which I think will help to raise the profile of the whistleblowing policy. Councillor Mann, just to come to your comments, it is a relatively low number, not uncommon across London boroughs actually for the numbers to be in single figures. It has gone up since last year, so I think although it's still low, the awareness of the policy is there. We could of course improve that through the awareness raising that we're intending to do. I agree with you, it's only part of the picture. So obviously we would encourage in all circumstances where the issues can be resolved informally that they are. People also have access, of course, to the grievance policy and procedure that isn't reported to the committee, and do access that very readily with the support of their trade unions if they're feeling aggrieved about anything within their employment relationship with us. In terms of employment tribunals, I won't pretend to know the exact figure that we have live at the moment, but it is incredibly low. So using that as an indicator, but I can get that information out to members of the committee for sure, but I'm not aware of any live cases at the moment, certainly that haven't arisen in the last 12 months. There are some that are still working their way through the courts because of the shortage of employment judges, and cases are typically taking a very long time to be heard in the tribunal. But yeah, I can certainly pull that data together. I think it would be useful for members of the committee to see, anonymised, of course.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Steve.
Sorry, Chair, you're on mute. If you could just unmute your microphone.
Hello.
There should be a little microphone button you can press on your screen, Chair.
Whilst the chair's finding that, I think Councillor Summer had a question for Steve.
Yes. Hi, Steve. Can you hear
Hello.
me?
Yes, I can.
So page 7, coming back from 3.7E, a concern regarding racial harassment, abuse toward Indian recruits. A case was investigated, however, no specific issue were evident amongst the Indian staff appointed. No further action was taken. Could you elaborate a little bit?
I can say a little bit more about that without compromising confidentiality. The concern was forthcoming and investigated, and actually the new starters, the new recruits, the Indian people were not didn't have any specific issues they wanted to raise, so it was almost a vexatious claim. So when we spoke to the staff individually, there were no issues to be raised.
Who was investigating?
That I would have to find out for you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
I'll
Thank
let
you.
you know.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, we
Yes,
can, Chair.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. This report is for noting, obviously, because Councillor Lal wasn't here, so I will go. We'll start with Councillor Eason. You have to note it because you weren't here at the beginning. Thank you. So yes, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Lal.
Yeah, happy to note this report.
Thank you, Councillor Mann.
Yes, Councillor Amrit Mann, I've heard all the debate and been here, and I'm happy to note the report, Chair. Thank you.
Can't hear you, Mr. Purewal. Yes, I heard and participated as well. Yeah, I'm happy with it.
Thank you. Councillor John Todd.
Sorry, can't hear you.
Sorry, Councillor Todd, you're on mute.
Yeah, I know, I've undone the move. Yeah, Chair, I've listened and I support the recommendation. Councillor John Todd Homefield.
It's for noting. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you all. Welcome.
Your mic is not on.
It's muted.
What's happening here?
We can hear you now, Chair.
Councillor, just before you start the next item, is this a good opportunity to introduce, or for Councillor Lal to introduce himself to the committee?
I'm just going to do that. Can you hear me now?
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. Councillor Lal, could you introduce yourself?
Thank you, Chair. First of all, can I offer my apologies for my late arrival to this meeting. I had to shoot off from work to get here. I do apologise. I'm the councillor for Heston East, and I'm happy to join this meeting with you, colleagues.
Thank you. Councillor Amartman had already actually said that you will be late. Thank you very much. Thank you. Can we go to the next agenda, update to contract and procedure rules?
Yeah, so my name's Clive Pelfman, Director of Finance and Resources at the Council, stepping in for Daniel Austin, who's away on holiday today. This is a report for decision, which we're bringing in Councillor Rajawat's name, which updates our contract procedure rules. Last time we updated them were 2018. So in addition to the usual updates we do every couple of years, we are attempting to strengthen our requirements for procurement in 3 key areas. Firstly, in terms of social value and environmental outcomes, and within these updated procedures will be a mandatory minimum 5% weighting when assessing tenders for social value and environmental issues. This will be applied to contracts over £30,000 and over 12 months in length. Secondly, we are developing our ability to award to our local businesses within the borough. This will be for local businesses applying for contracts up to £30,000 where appropriate. This function will be for the award through our supply chain, and obviously we'll have a due diligence to ensure that we meet competition and transparency purposes. Thirdly, we're also taking the opportunity to strengthen our contract management arrangements, both in terms of reporting, which will report quarterly on social value, real living wage and overall contract performance, and supplementing all of that with an enhanced training regime for all our contract managers across the organisation. So recommendations that sort of address those parts with a sort of more up-to-date set of contract standing orders. Happy to take questions, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Questions for Concession?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Clive, for introducing this report. This is one I'm particularly interested in because it includes and delivers on recommendations from some overview and scrutiny committee work that I was involved with last year. This was, and this is particularly the focus on delivering and measuring the delivery of social value and real living wages, especially in these tough economic times. It's really important that our suppliers are paying their staff real living wages. That's important for our local economy. So I really welcome that within the reporting. And I also welcome the emphasis on the environmental criteria, which again supports our climate emergency action. Together also with enhancements about awarding work to local Hounslow businesses. So this is all very good stuff, very good to see. My only reservation is about the detail that the threshold for social value and environmental criteria is on contracts which are over 12 months. Rather than inclusive of contracts which run for exactly 12 months. So that's a little disappointed in that. I have a feeling that there may be contracts which will just fall short. And when I was looking at what those contracts might be, I noted that the annual procurement plan, which this dovetails with, does not actually state, or did not actually state in February, the duration of the contracts. It reported contract start dates and contract value, but it did not disclose the contract duration. So I wasn't actually able to see how many 12-month contracts we had there, rather than 36 or 48 months. But overall, very pleased to see this coming forward, and and so I'd like you to pass on thanks to the relevant officers for the work they've done on this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do you want to answer now, or Clive, or do you want to wait for all the councillors to finish?
Whichever you're more happy with. I mean, that one I can certainly take away. In terms of reporting within the annual procurement plan, contract tenure, I mean, that's a very easy adjustment that we can do as part of the next annual procurement plan, which will be published as part of the February 2021 budget report. And obviously I'll feed your comments back to the team.
Thank you. Councillor Lal? Any comments?
Okay. Yeah, Chair, I've got a couple of questions for clarification and information, but also some questions to do with trends per se. So I agree with Councillor Easton on the social value and the environmental criteria which have been included, but I'd just like to know from officers as to when suppliers do come with these social value or environmental criteria, what kind of stuff are they putting forward? Then on page 35, question number 3, page 35, there's something to do with amending quotation, tender or bids. So I know this is just updating the procedures, but I'm minded to reflect on some experience that I had many years ago, where it was actually a whistleblower, and they actually cited that, perhaps this is the area where the council needs to take more action. So I'm only asking the question just to reassure myself that procedures are in place. But what I'm looking for is trends. So amending quotations, tenders or bids, how often does that happen? And is there a particular department where it happens more often than in others? And similarly on page 37 regarding waivers, how often does it happen? And is there a particular department there's a lot more wavering than other departments? And then on the same theme, page number 38, it says variation to the scope of contracts. Again, how often and which departments? It may be this is work for another session, because since this document is only updating our procedures, but I clearly feel that this is an area where we need to look at more detail.
Thank you. Councillor Mann? Yeah, Councillor Mann? Can you hear me?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear, Councillor Amrit-Man. Basically, I just like my two colleagues, I welcome the changes. They've been much needed, and obviously Councillor Easton has a head start on people like me because he sat on scrutiny and this has been looked at by them. So I hope he's happy. But Clive's reports have always been complete, so I'm happy to endorse this, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sumra.
Yes, I'm a little bit concerned about directly awarded contracts up to 30,000 3 times, which is 90,000 plus 70,000. I think it should be a more transparency and accountability. Not a one person can just say, okay, that's fine, and there must be a quotation taken. One or two.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Todd?
Yeah, Councillor Johnson, I have no questions. Thank you very much. It's a timely report. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, obviously the points which Councillor Lau and Councillor Sumra, I actually had those in mind, but very good. It's come there. Could you, Clive, give us some response, please?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of Councillor Lau's questions, obviously I don't have the information to hand, but can go away and develop a fuller answer. Other than to say, obviously this update is built on the principles of transparency and accountability for the organisation, and very much seeking to not just improve the robustness of our frameworks, which were reasonably robust in the first place, but also start drawing out more value from the contracts that we do put in place. I do know the answer to the waivers one, because the answer is 0. We haven't had any waivers over the course of the last 12 months. The committee in its previous form were being well aware that we had a bit of an issue with waivers sort of 3 or 4 years ago, and a lot of work has been put in terms of the training and development of our contract managers and the way in which our procurement mechanisms work to take away the frequency of those waivers. And whilst we haven't had any over the course of the last 12 months, that doesn't necessarily dictate that they're an unnecessary part of the process. From time to time, waivers will be necessary. And I guess my concern would be things would be happening without the supporting paperwork. Having that waiver process in place, having that amendment process in place, gives a framework within which we can operate swiftly, dynamically, but also fairly and transparently. And I guess that flows into Councillor Sumra's point. On occasions, it's entirely appropriate for the council to provide a direct award. Certainly, all the good work that the council did in terms of getting the community hub off the ground in very short order when the COVID impact hit the borough, we wouldn't have been able to do without the ability to directly award some contracts. And I guess from my perspective, I am keen to provide a framework to the organisation to enable it to operate in a dynamic way and respond to community needs, but given my statutory responsibilities, do so in a fair, transparent and accountable way, and consequently we need a framework which allows for almost all eventualities whilst accepting a number of the clauses in front of you this evening. One hopes never have to be brought into action.
Thank you. Obviously, Councillor Sumra said that if the 30,000 go and add up, if the same thing going to same supplier, it could be people could look at suspicious.
Yeah. Yes, and entirely justifiably, and which is why we report on contract values internally. And it is not a framework whereby an individual member of staff can sign off a £30,000 contract. In order to go to any market, whether it be a single supply market or a more competitive process, there's a myriad of paperwork which we're trying to put online that requires authorisations and procedures from budget holders within the organisation who have the right thresholds of authority. So it's taken out of context. This is a set of procedures that enable things to happen, but within that, within the wider organisation, there's a framework of a budget accountability that prevent individual officers without the authority going and awarding contracts whenever they so choose.
Thank you very much. Because we got to actually approve this, colleagues. Can I start with Councillor Lal?
Chair, I approve of the updated contract procedure.
Thank you. Councillor Mann? Oh, sorry, I forgot. Sorry. Councillor Easton, I should have come with you first.
Chair, I apologise if I can just interrupt. I'm not sure I heard for the minutes you say whether or not there was a proposer and seconder for the vote.
No.
Apologies.
Okay, no, I didn't. That's my apology. Yes. Anybody proposing?
I'm happy to propose, Councillor Easton here. I'm happy to propose approval of these new rules.
I second that.
Thank you. Can we just put it to vote now? Councillor Easton, start.
Yeah, Councillor Richard Easton, I've been here for the entire discussion and I vote in favour of approving these new rules.
Councillor Lal, I approve of the updated recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Mann?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I've been here for the entire report and the debate, and I approve of the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sumra?
Yeah, I heard and participate, and I approve all and the whole lot.
Thank you. Councillor Todd?
Yeah, thank you. Councillor John Todd, I agree that we go forward with item 4 on the agenda, namely an update to the contract procedure rules. I've been present during the discussion.
Thank you. And I've been myself, I'm present, Councillor Surinder Purewal throughout, and I agree and approve it. So decision carried unanimously. Thank you. Yeah. Then we go to the next item. Accounts. Rupa, it's you now. Yeah.
Oh, good.
Thank you, Chair, and evening members. Just to introduce myself, I'm Rupa Ragwani, Assistant Director of Finance, and this evening I'm going to give you a quick briefing on our annual accounts and annual accounts process. So just to draw your attention to agenda number 5, which is page 47 of the pack. There's a short covering paper there, which is for noting this evening. So Just to brief members, if they're not aware already, due to COVID this year, the government relaxed the reporting deadlines for our annual accounts process. So our draft accounts, which were due to be published end of May, has now been replaced with end of August. And our final published accounts, once they've gone through the audit process, which would have ordinarily been published at the end of July, has been relaxed to the end of November, and those dates are outlined on the first page of the report.
Yeah.
I'm pleased to say that we've prepared our draft accounts now, and they are on the council's website and before the 31st of August deadline. The audit work's commenced, and that will continue on throughout the rest of this month of July and into August. And we're hoping and we're aiming for completing that work during September to bring back a final set of accounts to the Audit and Governance Committee meeting in September for final approval ahead of the end of November deadline. Also attached with this paper, which would have normally have come to the March committee meeting, is the auditors' audit plans, which they prepare in advance of the audit. So there's a audit plan attached in Appendix B and C for both the council's main accounts and the pension fund accounts. The auditors are present at the meeting this evening and on the agenda next, and so they will give you a verbal update on those audit plans to bring that up to date as to what's happening at the moment for the audits. Finally, also within the accounts, we normally publish the annual governance statement with that. So on the accounts that are published on the website at the moment, the draft accounts, you won't see that incorporated within that set, but for the final set of accounts, we will publish the annual governance statement. That this evening's on a separate agenda item again later on the agenda, which will be presented by Mike Pindon. I'll take you through that for this evening. That's all I've got by way of an update on the accounts at the moment. It's just purely for noticing at the moment. Draft accounts are published and we'll come back in September with the final set for approval. Happy to take any questions.
Well, obviously, the accounts can't be ready at this stage because of all the properties. Any questions? Councillor Eason?
Thank you, Chair. I think just congratulations to the team for getting the draft accounts out and onto the website in July, and I know that we're now ahead of the timetable, and I appreciate we had some there were some difficulties last year versus the timetable, so I'm pleased to see the progress.
Thank you.
Thank
Councillor Lau?
Chair, I have no further comments.
Thank you. Councillor Rahman?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Amrit Mann. Just simply to say I defer some of the questions for September when the full report comes in its entirety. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Surinder?
I think they've done a good job. Well done. And I heard everything.
Thank you.
I'm happy with it.
Councillor John Todd?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I've read the report in detail, Bappa, and I was fascinated that the audit is concentrated on children's services value for money. I don't know whether you recall that. It's on page 63. Have they got a blanket responsibility for VFM, or have they picked on that because of their concerns about the Ofsted report?
You'll answer that first before I go on. Yeah. Could you, Rupa?
You're silenced.
You're silent. Could you put yourself on? Can't hear you.
Just unmute your microphone, it should work.
Unmute you.
So Rupert's been having a few problems with the kit today. So it might be worth asking Lucy to cover that point when we move on to the external auditors section, given that's coming from the external auditor.
Quite very happy to do so, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Obviously, the points been raised. The accounts can't be ready at this stage. We have to accept that because obviously the deadline's not there. Now we'll wait more. Next time comes, we'll go through it. Thank you. Thank you, Rupa.
I agree with that.
Thank you. And at this point of noting, are we happy to note? Are we happy to note?
Yes. Yeah, Councillor Eason, yes, happy to note this report.
Councillor Lau?
Councillor Lal, happy to note this report, Chair.
Councillor Mann?
Thank you, Chair. I've been here for the whole debate, and I'm happy to note this report. Thank you.
Councillor Simra?
Yeah, I'm happy to note that. I heard everything and I'm happy with it.
Yeah. Councillor John Todd?
Yeah, Chair, Councillor John Todd, I'm happy to note and confirm the statement of accounts item 5 on the agenda. I've been present throughout.
Thank you. Councillor Surinder Purewal? Yes, I was here all the time, and yes, I'm happy to note. Unanimously noted. Thank you. Can we go to the next item, external audit update? It's a verbal update. So we have officer from Nazars. Lucy?
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
Thank you. So just a few points. I can give you a quick update on the audit strategy memorandum that have been presented, and to answer the question from Councillor Todd, and to continue. Yeah, we have begun our external audit for the year. We've performed our initial review and our technical review of the accounts, and I've given comments back to the council. And fieldwork will start really properly early August. I think just for the benefit of the committee, COVID-19 has really changed the way we work. We envisage that the entire audit will be done remotely, which does add time to the process. But we've been doing this since the middle of March, so we're well practiced at it now. COVID-19 has impacted the work we do as well. We're having to do a lot more work around land and building valuations. The council does have a huge portfolio of land and buildings, so we will need to be doing additional work around that, as valuers have placed material valuation uncertainties in their reports. In other councils, we are having to do a lot of additional work around level 3 investments that are held by pension funds, but delightfully the pension fund level 3 investments have gone down in year, so it's not a significant risk for us to worry about at Hounslow. At this point, we don't envisage a change to the significant risks that we've identified in our audit strategy reports, but there may be slight changes to the way that we do things. One thing I will pick up on the audit strategy for the authority, we mentioned the change in the leasing standard, which will be a significant change to the balance sheet of the council. Due to COVID, that has been deferred for a further 12 months. So its first impact will be on the 2021-22 accounts. So we will revisit that with the council next year. On value for money, overall, we don't think COVID-19 will not impact the value for money opinion, the value for money conclusion. Apologies. That's because really COVID was only in the last 2 weeks of the year. What we will focus on is what happened for the other 50 weeks of the year. And we will focus on the governance arrangements that have been in place in the council since lockdown, how members have been briefed, etc., and the progress that has been made at the point we report on resetting the MTFS, which I'm sure we'll hear about later on. And to pick up on Councillor Todd's point around the value for money significant risk, where Ofsted rate an education service to be inadequate, we automatically have to qualify the value for money conclusion. So it's just really to take into account that, well, that the Ofsted rating was not inadequate, but in the Ofsted review, as well as an overspend in dedicated schools grant, I was just taking that all together, and that was potentially an area of risk that we wanted to explore. And we will be doing a bit of extra work on that, and speaking to Director of Children's Services, just to see the progress that has been made in that sphere and work against the action plan. So that's why it's in, really.
Thank you. Thanks, Lucy. Anybody got any questions?
Sure.
Councillor Todd?
Yeah, that was very helpful. Thank you very much for that explanation. You talked about valuation uncertainty. What's the main reason behind that? Is it market forces or a different accounting standard?
It's essentially there's very limited benchmark information because there's been no comparable sales from around the 17th of March. So valuers have been given guidance by RICS, the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, that they should really consider a material valuation uncertainty, just because there isn't a huge amount of supporting data at this point.
Okay, that's very clear. Thanks very much, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just good. What's good? Councillor Simra?
I'm happy with it.
Thank you. Councillor Mann? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Lucy, thank you very much for that report. That's very nice. And really, I have no questions to Lucy, and I'm quite happy to proceed. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Carmela?
Yeah, Chair, I don't have any questions on this report.
Thank you. Councillor Eason?
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of things, Lucy. On page 59, the significant risks matrix, I compared that with the previous year, and risks 1 and 2 have increased significantly on the likelihood axis. And so that's management override of controls and revenue recognition. So I'm really wondering whether that is just presentation or whether there's something behind that. And also in the pension fund, both risks there had again increased significantly on likelihood, and the second risk about valuation of unquoted investments, the value had diminished substantially from 30 million of that class of asset down to about 7 million. So I was just wanting to understand that, where the documents present these things as getting riskier, whereby the value involved in that case is lower. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Lucy, you want to come on?
Thank you, Councillor Eason, for reading the report in such detail to ask such a good question. I think really for us to class it as a significant risk, it's a bit like your own risk register, that the biggest risks are in the top right hand corner where they're red. So for us to say it's a significant risk, it should be of high likelihood and high impact. So I think the presentation potentially wasn't very clear last year. So that's why they've moved. It's not a change in our view of the risk of the audit at all. It's probably better documented this year. And on the level 3 investments, clearly this was written quite a while ago, and those level 3 investments have gone down now to £1.7 million in this year's financial statements. So if they remain at that level, that will not continue to be a significant risk.
Thank you. And obviously, also looking at this, obviously there are circumstances, we are in a pandemic situation, and that's what's affected everything and some things. But the main thing for me was that the risks are highlighted. That's what we want to see, that they are highlighted properly. Thank you, Lucy. Thank you very much. Are we just noting this?
Yes.
Is there nothing else to do? Are you happy? Everybody happy? Just note. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, happy to note.
Yeah, Councillor?
Yes, Chair, happy to note the report.
Amrit Man?
Yes, Chair, Amrit Man here. I've agreed with everything, and I'm happy to note the report, and I've been here present. Thank you.
Councillor Simra?
Yes, I am happy, and he explained properly.
Councillor John Todd?
I'm very happy with the report, and I've been here all the time. Thank you, John Todd.
Thank you. Well, I've been here all the time, and I'm quite happy to note it. Thank you. Thank you very much. Can we go to next item, draft internal plan, audit plan? Mike, you?
Hi, good evening, councillors. I'm Mike Pinder. I'm the head of audit and investigation. So I'm going to talk to you about the internal audit plan, which is on page 85 of your pack. Just to set the sort of scene in terms of planning process, I meet with directors and some key stakeholders to try and identify key risk areas of coverage. We look back at what we've covered over the last few years. I've included for your reference the coverage over the last few years, which is on pages 95 onwards. And ultimately, I then come up with a programme for a one-year programme, which is what we're looking to do at the coalface, as in this year's work programme. I did, as those of you who were around would hopefully remember, circulate the paper to you. We'd done the committee papers, but unfortunately because of lockdown, it was closed. So we decided we would send this out to you for comment, but obviously we're keen to get it formally approved. Normally we'd have this approved before we kick off the work. We have been able to undertake a little bit of work to date, which is unusual because obviously we'd like your prior approval. The operational plan as it stands is on pages 91 to 93. Like I say, so this is sets out the key risks. Since the paper that we circulated to you in March, I'd just like to highlight we have been agile and responding to key risks within the COVID environment, and we've undertaken 3 projects. Those are projects 28, 29 and 30. Obviously we couldn't bring those to you prior for approval, but we're keen to just make you aware. So this was looking at the PPE and just giving it a bit of advice about the storage. The COVID-19, what we set up was an expenditure monitoring program to try and look at a few key areas of expenditure. There's always a risk as we all move to remote working, changes in control and having to adapt and respond. So we wanted to do a sort of high level monitoring of expenditure review. So that's been going through. We've also been quite involved in the business rate grants process, giving advice and looking at some of the assurance processes at the back end to try and minimise the fraud risks of awarding those grants through the process. So that the team hasn't been idle. We have been able to do some work, and we have been able to progress some of these projects. But we're now looking for agreement to the plan. The period where we forecast will obviously change on a number of these, and we're just in the process of talking to services at the moment to try and get a good idea of when we'll be able to undertake those. But at this stage, we're aiming to deliver the entire plan for the year as well. So over to you for any questions.
Obviously, the plans for quarters will change depending on what we are doing, that sort of thing. It could change, but mostly the orders of what you plan will be carried out in the year. That's basically what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, as we have been, it's necessary to be agile, and as key risks emerge again, and you know, we are talking to people about any key risks that have come through the response into the recovery stage. So if that changes, what we will always do is bring that back to members to see as part of our progress report if there are changes in the year.
Thank you. Councillor Easton, do you have any questions?
Yeah, a few comments really. Yeah, very much drawn to the COVID-19 response items. And I'm pleased to hear that you're considering risks associated with that that period. So clearly, the move to home working may have created some additional risks around some of our ICT systems and etc. But it sounds like you've got those on your radar. The other thing that I'm particularly interested is about the the speed of decision making during that period, and whether and the fact that there probably hasn't been the usual levels of discussion and scrutiny around some decision making. I've noted that over the 3 months, April to June, there was 49 officer delegated decisions published at the end in the tables that were published at the end of each month. That compared with 19 officer delegated decisions in the same 3 months in the previous year. And I think there was also a reasonable number of cabinet single member decisions. So I'd be interested in your comments about those as a risk area and what controls are in place to make sure that if anything, make sure that anything that needs to be revisited and perhaps corrected is done on a timely basis. Obviously, we can't turn the clock back, but yeah, so some of those I feel like they probably do need to be looked at. And then just some detail points in the operational plan. In your later report, there's a topic that was deferred, stated as being deferred to 2021. I can't see that in the operational plan. That's the SEN high needs costs. So that was deferred from 2019-20. I can't see that included. And then comparing the strategic plan on page 97, there was safeguarding at Bristol Court and Professional Development Centre were both marked for 2021 year, yet I don't see those in the operational plan either. So you are committing to a great deal of work, so I'm not necessarily wanting to put more on there, but yeah, if we are dropping any of these off, I trust that is based on objective prioritisation. Yeah, so that was my comments really. Thank you.
Thank you. What you want to answer now? Go now, Mike.
Yep. Yes, if I could. In terms of the speed of decisions, absolutely take your point on that. We introduced the expenditure one, the expenditure audit to be able to have a look at that and try and respond to a high degree of that, and watching the money go very quickly out of the door. So we were very sort of aware of that. And obviously talking to Clive and directors about some of the bits and pieces that we're doing in order to respond to that. Obviously we can't look at everything. Obviously we don't record every decision and every bit of advice we give, just the key ones. But I will have further conversations with management to see if there's any areas where it would be helpful to look at that from a risk perspective. In terms of the deferred one, the SEN high needs, you're absolutely right. What we don't do is add it onto the plan, but we will include that in terms of the progress to you when we bring you back the Q1. In terms of those two projects that are in there, well spotted. Basically what happened is we had further dialogue with Children's Services and introduced an additional audit which was perceived to be slightly higher risk than those two areas. So managing resources and those kind of things. It's useful to have those, and they may be an area that we consider as part of next year's planning. Yeah, it's just an oversight in terms of amending the strategic plan versus the operational plan. But we added in a further project for Children's Services which is project management, item 10, which we perceive to be a slightly higher risk than the Bristol court work.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Lau.
Chair, I have no questions on agenda item 7.
Thank you. Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Amrit Mann. I have a question. It's in relation to the strategic plan on page 95 and concerning Lambton 360 waste and recycling. I note that there's no actual tick for 2019-2020. And I'm just wondering, because obviously you've got a tick next to health and safety and there's a degree of overlap. But if there's an issue in regards to Lambton 360 because of COVID, and the time taken for that audit to happen, there may be something that we missed up simply because you would want to address that as a part of the waste and recycling team, because they're very important to the overall health and well-being. I'm wondering whether that would be done under the health and safety side, or whether why there is a particular gap in terms of 2019-2020 in relation to Lambton 360. Thank you, Chair.
Yep. So let me just check on that one. So what we've got in there is governance arrangements in relation to Lambton. So this is the I'm just trying to think. It's not. Yeah, it is showing on page 95. It's the bottom line just above health and safety. So we're looking at the sort of overarching governance arrangements for Lambton. So it's going to look at some of the compliance testing on key high-level processes and monitoring. So there is some work. What I would say is, as I've mentioned, in terms of the COVID-19 response work, we do also remain agile. So if when we're talking to management about stuff, new key risks emerge, then we may consider and reprioritise plans during the year, which is essentially what we're doing now, and we'll report back if we are picking up additional work. But we're due to have some conversations around the sort of overarching governance arrangements on Lambton with Lambton. That will drill down into some of the sort of overarching policies and processes, and should provide a useful sort of oversight of how the company is run.
Thank you. Any more questions? No? Right. Yeah, Samrat? Yeah.
No question. No, I'm happy.
Yeah, Chair, just a supplementary, and I'm not seeking an immediate thing, but in terms of a comment, and I've listened to what Mike has to say, I'm just stating that if this is a particular concern to do with COVID, then certainly with rubbish and waste collection, recycling, we need to move that up a gear as a higher priority than what we're actually showing, because that is fundamental to maintaining what's it called a lack of passing on, shall we say, of COVID and associated diseases with the non-collection of waste.
Mike.
Noted, Councillor Mann. I'll take that away, and we'll have conversations with management about that and how it impacts in terms of the overall service and whether there's benefit in us doing that work. Thank you.
Councillor, do you want to come back?
Yes, yeah, thank you for that. I know I earlier on said I didn't have any questions, but listening to Councillor Mann and how he's dovetailed the issues about waste recycling, etc., it did come to mind that later on in the report there is something to do with the high levels of fraud within right to buy, and within the strategic plan, that the table that's there on page 96, in the same vein, under right to buy, there doesn't seem to be anything lined up for investigations this year, next year? Since it's a really key area where there seems to be high level of fraud, maybe that should be included.
Okay, Mike.
So we have had coverage of the right to buy process. In terms of those figures, I think as I've highlighted, I don't want to skip into that report too much. That is all of the cases that have not progressed. So not all cases are actually fraudulent. They don't have a mechanism to monitor all cases. That information was relatively new to me, and I am having conversations about that. I think the proactive work they're doing in that is very important, and it does help prevent fraud in that area and stop some right to buys and protect those assets. So it's very key. We are aware of that process, and it's the fact that those numbers are coming in means it's effective. I'll have a further conversation to see if there's scope to add value in further doing that work though, and feedback in future committee meetings.
Thank you. Councillor Sumra?
I have no questions.
Councillor John Todd?
I'm happy.
Yeah, Councillor John Todd, I've got no questions about the draft internal audit plan. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no questions, obviously, on the draft plan. And thank you just for noting. Are you agreed to note? Yeah,
Councillor Richard Eason. Yeah, I think we're approving it. So yeah, I would like to move that we do approve it.
Have to approve it. Yes, sorry, approve. Yeah.
Chair, Councillor Lal, present during the discussion and happy to approve the report on agenda item 7.
Thank you. Councillor Barnes?
Thank you, Chair. Amrit Man. If it hasn't been seconded, I'm happy to second it and also agree with the recommendations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sumra?
I'm happy to recommend it because I was listening very carefully. It's very well explained. Yes, I approve that.
Councillor John Todd?
John Todd, I agree. I've been here all the time. Endorse the recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Purewal? Yes, I was here all the time and I've actually approved the report. Unanimously agreed. Thank you. Can we now go to the next item? Again, Mike, is you.
Thank you, councillors. I'll introduce myself again. It's Mike Pinder, Head of Audit. We're now on item 8, which is page 98. This is a report for noting. So this is our quarterly performance report, which rather uniquely is a 3 quarterly report. Once again, we had an election back in December, which interrupted our flow for Q2. And then obviously with lockdown, as advised for Q3, we were interrupted. I think that's probably unprecedented. So I'm really pleased to be here this evening. So we have Q2, Q3, and Q4, which is a much lengthier report than normal. The benefit probably to yourselves is that it brings brings the majority of the reports at the same time, and sort of links nicely into the head of audit's opinion. The head of audit's opinion basically is my opportunity to sort of conclude on all the work for the year. I've included that. It is on page 100, and I've just tried to sort of set the scene in terms of what's positive and what's negative assurance levels, and to sort of aid how I've come to my overall conclusion. Members who've been with me for a while always love the term reasonable assurance. So we define reasonable assurance in the table at 5.8. Essentially, I think it's a good level of assurance for an organisation of this size and nature. Obviously, we are going to find issues through the year. It's our job, and we are pointed to some of the more problematic areas through the risk process, through discussions with management, to try and see if things are working in the way that we expect. So I think an overall level of 62% of the reports being in the overall positive vein it helps me to lead to that conclusion. We're also asked to do an overall conclusion in relation to the financial system specifically, and that's also seemed to be reasonable, which is borne out by 3 of the 4 reports in their area being reasonable assurance. Inevitably, there's questions around no assurance, and we've got 1 report this year which is nil assurance, which relates to the direct payment system. Details of that, more details of that are in my normal quarterly 4 update, and there's a breakdown of the kind of issues. That's at the bottom of page 109, but I think that's something that I just needed to draw out as part of my annual opinion as well. Moving to the overall performance for the year of the Internal Audit Service. So the details of the progress of all the reports are set out in the tables that run from page 102 on to 106. We then break down the reports, and as always, I'm sure members have read it, but I draw your attention to those reports with limited or nil assurance, which are at paragraph 6.5 onwards, page 106 onwards. In terms of the overall performance of the audit team, I'm pleased to report, even in these difficult times, we're able to complete 100% of the plan. We pretty much got all the reports to draft status prior to lockdown, which was a good place to be in, and then we just had to get a few reports finalised. So we had a little bit of pause and disruption in our work while services responded. But we've managed to finalise everything, which is a good position to be at, even at this time of year. And I'm really pleased with the performance of the team in getting that work completed. I then moved to the follow-up section, which is at section 6.1 on page 114. So I'd say overall the follow-up implementation at 81% is good. Obviously, we'd all like that to be at 100%. We do track and we do report on all recommendations. Now, as I've set out on 6.11, uniquely because of the disruption due to lockdown, both to my team in terms of having to respond to other pieces of work and other services being redeployed or put under pressure, we actually paused the follow-up work. So most of this wasn't followed up in the time, and we're setting out to work through that now and get an update. So the actual status and implementation might not be 100% accurate. We just haven't had those conversations. I would say the team are responding to that, and we are following up on those, and we are trying to get some of these which are getting a little bit out of date implemented, and trying to make sure that we follow through, and we'll provide a full update of the status of those to you in September, and I'd hope to see some of those have moved on.
Thank you. Any thoughts or comments on consideration? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mike, for the report, and thank you to you and your team for the terrific volume of work you've done over the year. I just wanted to hone in on some of the reports, the individual projects, starting with the direct payments on page 109. I just want to understand on that one whose funds are at risk from those lack of controls. Is that the fund? Is that only the funds which are attributable to the service users, or is there a wider risk to the the council's funds on that one. So just want to understand that one a little bit more. In terms of the one above that, the children's health and adult contract management, first of all, I wanted to make sure that those services where you had high risk findings are not exempt from the contract procedure rules that we approved earlier. And I wanted to understand whether the findings that you found about particular providers or lack of monitoring of services providers was a sample, or whether your team had scrutinised all the contracts, because those findings, as you say, are high risk. That's of considerable concern. Then, in terms of the NNDR and Liberata, particularly the second high risk findings, where 15 write-offs of 141,000 had been processed in error. A question there really about what else, how much else might have been done in error by that contractor and not found if we were working on a sample basis. And then finally, I just wanted to draw out the corporate property one, where we're saying that health and safety checks have not been properly organised. That actually puts at risk lives if we haven't got evacuation standards and things like that in some of our buildings, community buildings. And the asset management part about lack of planned maintenance programs and things, that again is something that has a potential cost of to us of millions if if we're not maintaining a cycle of condition surveys and planned maintenance around our buildings. I have quite detailed knowledge of one building where that is the case, that we've got there's legacy maintenance costs of in the six figures just for one building. So I'm pleased that your work has identified that risk, and I'll be very keen to know how that is being put right by corporate property. So that was the end of the ones I wanted to comment on.
Thank you quite a lot. Yes.
Yeah, it's quite important work, Chair.
Okay, if I can come back on that. So in terms of the direct payments, so it is all council funds. So basically, where a client is awarded a direct payment, basically they're given a budget of monies, which they're allowed to spend on services relating to their general care. So it's all underwritten by the council. It's usually a fixed amount. So basically, where there is an overspend, the pressure comes. They have that budget and that remit to do that. But if we give them too much money, then the spend and the pressure is on the council. I think that was the crux of your question on that one. In terms of the contract management audit, you asked if they had any exemptions. No, I don't think anybody has a direct exemption. And in terms of the question about did we look at a sample or everything, so generally we would always look to sample, and that would identify, you know, a perspective about is that, you know, a one-off or whatever. Usually if we identify one, out of a small sample, we might extend the sample to sort of try and get that perspective and flavour. Unfortunately, we can't look at everything, and we don't, and equally we don't want to repeat what management are supposed to be doing. So we flag the risk. If I had a pound for every time somebody said, "Oh, that's the only one we've missed," you know, the one that we just happened to pick up in our sample, I'd be a very, very wealthy man now. Probably nearly as rich as Clive. But you know, unfortunately, we have to do that. If we do identify significant concerns, we may extend that sampling. And usually, you know, where we do get that challenge of it will be the only one, we do that. Back as an auditor, if, you know, somebody said something hadn't been signed, I'd go and flick through and see if that was a one-off or extended. So we'd try and focus in on some of those sort of particular control things, but we can't repeat everything. I think that answered your question on that one. In terms of the NNDR and the error. Actually, this is one of those cases where we did go and ask further questions to try and extend. So we'd sort of started with a sample, identified the broader issue, and then we looked into an even broader issue to see if it was a one-off. So the 15 write-offs were a one-off. We asked a lot of questions as part of that in terms of how could this happen, in order to try and understand the broader picture and the recommendations around that broader, how could it happen, and to try and prevent that kind of thing happening again, were included in the report. Final question around corporate property. The points you raise, I fundamentally agree with. These are all high risk recommendations. As you know from the follow-up process, we seek to follow up all of the high recommendations and report back to you, so you will get a flavour in terms of the progress that the service is making on those. Where particular concerns exist, we do try and keep a dialogue going even before the implementation is due. But with this one, as I say, we will come back and report on the progress of those in the future.
Thank you, Mark. Councillor,
Thank you.
Coming to you, any questions?
Hi, Chair. Yeah, I think the report itself is very, very clear and concise, and it's very, very illuminating the work of the Audit Committee, and I commend them on doing this work. And they have uncovered some very, very serious and concerning areas under the limited category, as they put it, limited assurance levels. So their action plans are attributed to that. But I mean, the clincher for me was on page 112. I mean, I know Councillor Easton picked up the NNDR, but on page 112, where we have under the page 112 under customer relations, engagement, and facilities management, we have down the bottom there a paragraph which says that one individual had the ability to raise and vary purchase orders, and then, you know, manually authorized invoices for payment. So, you know, the Audit Committee must be commended for digging out these irregularities, and we need to be a little bit more vigilant to make sure that we nip these in the bud. And this report also refers to the right to buy refusals as well, which have saved us a hell of a lot of money. So that's my comments. But there are a few things that I'd like to know from Mark in terms of acronyms. So there's some on page 112 where it says flange, FLAGE. What does that mean?
Oh, yeah.
What? I've got a couple. What is a super user?
Okay.
And what is a shareholder garment?
Right, Mike.
Okay. So FLAGE is Fire Legionnaires, Gas and Electrics.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Okay.
Nearly got me.
That's the
a super user is generally somebody on a system that has more access than normal. So, like a systems administrator for a system, that's a super user.
Mm-hmm.
so they have more access on there. Sorry, what was the last one? I didn't quite catch it.
Shareholder garment on page 108. Under customer relations and engagement, last paragraph, it says locating the shareholder garments. 108, item 6.
That is a very good question. So I think it's referring to the general documentation and the setup. Sorry, it is a strange terminology, isn't it?
I know Audit uses strange terminology, but I never come up with that one.
Yeah, I apologise for that one. I don't know. It could even be a typo, but I think what they're referring to is actually the sort of the core documentation that sets that out.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And Councilman? Yeah. Councilman, you have.
Yep. Thank you, Chair. Amrit Man here. Mike, first of all, a big thank you to you and your team, right, in carrying out this audit at very difficult and extreme times. So I can say that in those sort of times, the pandemic times, it's been very challenging to maintain financial oversight. I haven't got a question as such, because I think I will leave that for the next time, which means that you will have a complete report for the quarter that I would want to look at, which is the time during the COVID period, because obviously that will tell us where some of the issues, I know you've highlighted in the body of the report, where you think, and Councillor Lal has also stated some examples where one particular individual has complete and utter control, and those sort of schemes we need to look at, and we need to look at post-COVID when the next set of audit report comes up, so we can ask whether there's any greater demand on those particular areas that have been highlighted, which we need to address through the audit. So, but once again, a big thank you to you and your officers, right, in carrying out financial oversight during these very difficult times. I don't have a question as such. Thank you, Chair, for indulging me. Thank you.
Councillor Samra, yes.
First of all, Mike, you and your team, congratulations, because you've done very good job. And all I want to ask about 107, right in the bottom. What have you done with the guy who payment processed without any authorization by officer, and according with the delegation limit, but was only 50,000, and he done millions of pounds. What have you done with the guy?
So it's not an individual. It's a process. So we've gone back to Liberata to ask them to set up a process to make sure that stuff is authorised.
Although all the question been asked by other people, because I was ready to go, because 7 and 8, I was amazed. How can they do it? Their limit is 50,000. They're just how can they get away?
So I don't think their limit is 50. It just needs to be defined so that there is an authorization process in line with the delegated limit. So you're absolutely right. It's necessary to put something in there to make sure that we have the appropriate authorizations on that.
That's why I earlier raised the question on about £30,000 because of that transparency. If people like yourself is not there, I mean, the council won't be here then, because they will sell it out.
Can I come in on the NNDR point, Mike?
Yep.
So Liberata should have managed things differently, but for the write-offs that Mike is alluding to, they were not write-offs where judgment was applied. They are write-offs where a court process has declared either a business bankrupt, or their businesses that no longer exist and therefore we can't trace debt. So I guess things should have been done differently, and we've dealt with that, and there's process in place to prevent reoccurrence. But I guess I'm keen to differentiate between write-offs that require an element of judgment and write-offs whereby the council has no recourse to recover those funds through a mixture of reasons.
Thank you. Thank you much. Councillor Todd? John?
Yeah, I have no questions. Thank you. I've listened to the whole debate.
Well, Thank you very much, Mike. Thank you. It's a very detailed report. We're very pleased, obviously, that you've done a very good job. Obviously, there's some concern about the number of reports where the limited assurance, significant number, well above what I would normally expect as an auditor. And the other thing is that the follow-ups not being able to do, that's the second thing. The third thing is that really remarkable that you have brought in over £8 billion while looking at the fraudulent activities. I would say fraudulent activities. That's a pat on your back. Really, is very good that you've done that. So it's reports, all the reports have to be noted, and I will move that I agree to move, noting it. It's not approval for noting. Anybody seconding it?
Yes, I'll second that.
Thank you. Now, everybody, Councillor Easton.
Yeah, Councillor Easton, I'm happy to note this report, being here for the discussion.
Thank you. Councillor Lal.
Your mic is off.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
How dare you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Councillor Lal, present for the discussion, note agenda item 8 report.
Have we lost the chair?
Now we lost the chair.
Yeah, the chair has disappeared. So I think he's disconnected.
That's careless, isn't it? Shall we ask the Vice Chair to step in?
Oh, do what? Okay, Mr. Mann, it's you now.
Yeah, Chair. Thank you, Acting Chair, Councillor Amrit Mann. Yes. It's a shame sometimes on live sort of discussions, these sort of things happen. We've lost the chair, our main person, but certainly for the purposes of report taking, I note the report. Been here present throughout the debate and discussion. So as set out in section 1 of the report, I note all of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Todd.
Yeah, hi. I note the report and agree with the contents. I've been present all the time.
Thank you. But I'm happy too. So that's concluded. So where's Mr. Purewal then? My battery is very low now. My computer's battery, not my battery.
Sorry, shouldn't laugh.
We might need a vice chair then. Should we move on to the next agenda item if you're,
yes,
if you're happy, Vice Chair?
Very chair.
So I think, Mike, that's the draft annual governance statement, is it, item 9?
Yep. So okay, I'll introduce more swiftly, shall I? So this is a spoiler for noting. This forms part of the accounts. It's a statement very much done with the organisation, looking at the controls and getting positive statements back from all of the directors about their control environments. So we pull all that together. It, as I say, it forms part of the annual accounts, and when we come back to you in September, it'll be a formal decision for agreement. But for now, it's largely to note. I probably draw your attention to the table on page 132, which sets out the significant governance concerns. Just to say, COVID makes a reference, although very small part of it related to the last financial year. We are required to go back and look at significant material events, and it's a fairly significant material event, so we've made some reference to it. and just largely the fact that the council had to respond, and it was necessary to get the council structure, Council Gold, working on it and managing the overall response and how it's been progressed. And we also referenced the direct payments audit, which was referred to in the last report, and the overall financial position, which isn't anything bad. It's just basically the fact that we continue to have to manage that pressure. Welcome back, Chair. Sorry, I've just finished my introduction of that paper. Your Vice Chair has been stepping in and agreed the last paper. So we're just on the annual governance statement.
Yeah, fine.
Any questions, please, gents?
No, don't have questions.
Yeah, Councillor Easton here. No questions on this one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Lal here. No questions on this agenda.
Yep, Councillor Amrit-Mann here. No questions, Chair. Thank you, and welcome back.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Archie. Just I was panicking, more panicking. That's what it was. Yeah.
That's what happened when you panic.
So the quarterly monitoring of the governance statement. Yeah.
This one. Sorry, can we just confirm we've noted that one?
Yeah, I just noted that. The next one, the quarterly monitoring corporate risk register.
Chair, hang on. I think in terms of process, if we start with Councillor Richard Eason and then work our way down, then for the records, it would be correct record.
Right,
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I've done that. Okay. Councillor Eason.
Councillor Richard Eason here. Happy to note the reports under agenda item 9. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lal.
Councillor Lal, present for the duration of the discussion on agenda item 9 and have noted the report.
Thank you. Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Amrit-Mann here. I've been present throughout the debate and happy to note the report. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Simra.
I'm happy to note throughout I was present, alert, and still awake.
Thank you. Councillor John Todd.
Yeah, Councillor John Todd, agree with the report, been present throughout. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. All unanimously agreed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can we move to the next item? Quarterly monitoring corporate risk register. That's Lorelei. Is yours?
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
Good evening, everybody.
Yeah,
I'm Lorelei Watson. I'm the Head of Strategic Finance for Treasury, Pensions and Audit. And the report I'm introducing for you tonight is the usual monitoring of the corporate risk register to the end of March 2020. The report is on page 135 of your agenda, and it's for noting. I'll just pull out the key changes for you. So in the report summary box on page 135, the relevant risks are now reflected in COVID-19 in the risk register. 3 risks have had their scores changed. So risk 1, which is housing supply and demand, overall that's decreased, but it still remains red. Risk 2, which is risk 9, the recycling strategy, that's decreased. The likelihood is decreased, but it remains amber. And risk 10, which is commerciality relating to the Lambton 360 companies, that's actually increased. The likelihood is increased, but the impact is marginal, so that remains amber as well. And the combined impact of these changes on the average risk score reduces it from 11.4 to 11.3. So the report follows the usual format. Page 137, the table in para 4.4. This is the summary of the most significant of the mitigating actions taken in the previous quarter. Then we've got the usual spread of the risk scores in the risk matrix on page 139. You'll still see that we still have 3 red risks. These are the red risks that we had previously. So it's risk 1, housing supply and demand, risk 5, the medium-term financial strategy, and risk 13, which is exiting the European Union. Then we have the direction of travel on page 140, and as we've just been talking about, the average risk score has fallen from 11.4 to 11.3. If we turn to the appendices, the full risk register at Appendix 1 starts at page 144, and the mitigating actions for each risk for the previous quarter are highlighted in yellow. The scoring methodology is in Appendix 2. So the report is for noting. I'm happy to take any questions on the process. Any questions that you might have on the detailed risks, I'll attempt to answer, but I might have to refer them back to the risk owners.
Thank you.
Right, thank you.
Yes, yeah, well, I'll start with the acquisition.
Thank you very much for the report. As usual, it's very comprehensive. I've got no questions. Just thank the officers and the risk owners for their work on that.
Thank you.
Councillor Lau.
Chair, report agenda item number 10. I have no questions.
Thank you. Councillor Lau. Amritman, sorry. Amritman, yeah.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And not so much a question, just a highlighter to all the members that in terms of the item number 1, which is the delivery of our 5,000, it's a council pledge, and we're failing on that we need to look back, and obviously the people whose report this is need to refer back and see what else can be done. I know we're in challenging economic times. If it means that we're not be able to deliver it, then maybe we need to change the colouring scheme, because we're never going to achieve it then otherwise if we fall into a recession. So that's my worry. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor
Simra. I'm happy. It was very well explained. So
thank you. Councillor Janton.
No questions whatsoever. A beautiful report.
Thank you. And I have no questions. Obviously, Amrit had raised a question, but as always, quite detailed, that sort of thing. Thank you.
Exactly.
It's for noting, and we just note it. It's not for approval.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done.
All agreed? All agreed?
All noted.
Thank
Agreed.
you. Thank you. That was yours. Next item. Can we go next item then?
I think that's me again, Chair.
Yes.
Item 11.
Yes, Mike, you're back. Yes.
I'll keep this one short. So it's page 170. This is one for you to agree, but it's my second spoiler of the night. So this is basically the plan of work that we intend to bring to the committee. We introduced this when the two committees came together, just to make sure that all the important work of the two committees was maintained. Essentially, it sets out all the work that's due or could come during the period. And I won't go into a great deal more detail, but ask for members to agree that, or if there's any additional papers that they think are required.
Thank you, Mike. So I'll move agreement, and I'll start with the Councillor Easton.
Just one very small comment. The electoral boundaries on mentioned work on page 177. I think it's on scheduled to come back in September. The statutory instrument was laid before Parliament earlier this month, so we're now in the final 40-day process or something there for the boundary changes. So hopefully we can tick that off in September.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Lal, no questions, Chair.
Councillor Amritman.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Amritman, no questions. I'm aware the Vice Chair's battery may run out any time now. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Simra.
No question. Thank you very much, Mike. You've done a great job. Keep up the good work. That's what we need.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Janton.
Yeah, no questions. Thank you.
Yeah, I have no questions, and thank you, Mike, again. Keep up the good work. £8 million, bringing in £8 million is not easy. But
next time again.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we commend you and your team.
Yeah, very good, very good.
Carry on.
Come on.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Chair, we have to agree the report.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think we need to go for the vote on that one. Thank you.
Oh, yes, we have to vote. Yes. Okay, can I move to agree the vote? I agree with it, and Council.
I second that.
Yeah.
Councillor
Richard Eason, I agree the report.
Thank you. Councillor Lau.
Councillor Lal, present during the discussion, and I agree with the report on agenda item 11.
Thank you. Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor McMahon, I've been present for the whole debate and I agree with the report. Thank you very much.
Councillor Simra.
Same here, I agree, and I'm very happy because what happened, we got a lot of money back.
Thank you.
Well done.
Councillor John Todd.
Yeah, I agreed. I was present throughout. Thank you.
Thank you. And I agreed, unanimously agreed, unanimously. And the next one is the date of next week, 28th of September.
Agreed.
Yeah, thank you. Any other urgent business?
No, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you all the officers and my colleagues. All thank you very much.
Thank you.
My apologies. Messed anything up.
Good evening.
Thank you.
All of you. Good night.
And good night. Goodbye. Thank you.